Alright guys, so now we have to pour the wort into the fermenter. So go ahead and make sure that your funnel that's been sanitizing, go ahead and stick that in and go ahead and start pouring. Now as you notice, since we're using no rinse sanitizer, there's going to be a lot of foam. However, this is fine. It's not like soap bubbles. Don't be afraid of the bubbles. They don't affect the taste or the flavor, or they don't hurt anything in the beer. Now this is common sense, but it also helps if the fermenter is on the ground. It's going to be easier to pour. So once you're done pouring, and guys, if you have any sludge left in your boiling pot, you don't need to pour that in. Go ahead and leave the sludge behind. Some people actually like to pour everything in. It helps, they think it helps flavor the beer. Doesn't really make that big of a difference. And now what we need to do is we need to add water to get this back up to 5 gallons. So now Joby's going to go ahead and add water, and we want to get this to 5 gallons. So that's why it doesn't really matter how much. If you were off by a little bit and you didn't mix exactly 2.5 gallons at first, it has the same amount of flavoring and aroma in it, and you always end up with 5 gallons of beer. So again, you can see my mark right here. So just go ahead and fill it up to that mark. And again, you want to use nice quality, high quality drinking water for this. If you have, not the greatest quality tap water, or if it smells like sulfur, then I wouldn't recommend using that. Remember, good water makes good beer. All right, perfect. Now the next thing we have to do is we need to add the yeast. Because remember, right now we pretty much have non-alcoholic beer. So what this yeast is going to do whenever we add it, through the fermentation process, and that is basically just letting it sit for 2 weeks, the yeast is basically going to eat the sugars that were in the syrup and is going to convert them to alcohol and carbon dioxide. So go ahead and make sure that you actually sanitize your scissors and your hands and the yeast packet. That's why everything's wet right now. Cut this. And if you have a bucket, you can actually sprinkle it on, but if you have a fermenter, then just pour it in slowly. And a lot of people actually think that if they add more yeast, then they'll get more alcohol. Well, that's not always the case. If your alcohol content is too high, then the yeast will actually start to die off. And another thing is, if you add a lot of yeast, then you're gonna have a very yeasty taste, which kind of tastes like dirty socks, if you ever ate dirty socks. Now go ahead and take your bung, which is that rubber stopper. This should also be fully sanitized, and go ahead and jam that into the top of your carboy. Just like that. So now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and grab that airlock that was being sanitized. And there are different types of airlocks. These are my favorite one. And what you want to do is, in these two little compartments, they usually have little indicator lines right here. These lines indicate how much sanitizer to fill this airlock with. So these lines are right here, right where my finger is, if you can't see on the video. So go ahead and just dump some out. And that's pretty good right there. So now we're going to go ahead and take this, and again, make sure that this is sanitized, and go ahead and stick it into that bung. So go ahead and take your airlock right now and jam it right in your bung hole. And what's going to happen during the fermentation process is, like I said, the yeast is basically going to eat the sugars that were in the wort and produce alcohol, which we want in our beer, and also carbon dioxide is a byproduct. So whenever this happens, the carbon dioxide is going to flow out this and out into the air, so it doesn't just build up in our fermenter and blow up. Now the cool thing about this is that this airlock right here does not allow bacteria to flow back into the wort and contaminate the beer. This only allows the gas to flow in one direction, keeping our beer nice, clean, sanitized, and the bacteria outside. Now, if you can see on top that some of the yeast is still dry, don't worry about it, it'll saturate with time. But anyways, go ahead and move this to a cool, dark area and let it sit for 2 weeks. Now, the length of time depends on your recipe, so go ahead and double check your recipe for how long the recommended fermentation is. But basically, you'll know when it's done because you'll see in about 2 days that there are bubbles that get produced whenever the yeast gives off carbon dioxide. So whenever those bubbles stop, it can be a little before or a little after 2 weeks. then you know your fermentation process is done and you're ready to bottle the beer. So for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on bottling day.